Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
It's kind of organised in a kind of way, but in many ways it's not. You've got to just flick through everything and look for what. And my wife, to her credit, kind of passed the door. She said to me later, she passed the door a couple of times when she'd finished looking at what she was looking at. And in the end, she didn't give me a call on the phone, or she didn't kind of, say, are you done yet? Because she could see the look on my face. She just took herself off to a coffee shop down the road and went and got a coffee and a slice of cake. And because she knew I'd gone down a rabbit hole. She just said the look on your face was just like, and I was having an experience.
Greetings! Welcome to another Guitar Smarts episode. Thanks very much for joining us. This week we are asking the question, does anyone listen to albums anymore? Streaming music is undoubtedly convenient, and how we all consume music these days. However, has the ability to listen to any track instantly, or let Spotify choose your playlist, actually resulted in the death of the album experience? Does anyone craft an album the way they used to? Or is the industry geared up to just produce a collection of singles all in one place? That's what we're discussing this week. Come and join us on our social media pages. You can find us at facebook.com/guitarsmarts, and also come and say hello on Instagram. We're there at guitar_smarts as well. If you like the podcast, give us a rating, give us a review as well. And I'm going to leave links in the show notes to how you can do that. Super easy. We really appreciate it if you could. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's get to it. Hey, Kiran, good to see you, buddy. Are you well?
Yeah, really good, mate. Really good, thank you. On the final throes of my 2-week holiday. The looming threat of having to go back to the day job and do some work in a few days' time is there. But we've got a long weekend this weekend in the UK. It's a bank holiday weekend, so we've got Monday off as well. And I've got a couple of gigs and stuff coming up over the weekend and some family time. So yeah, all is good, mate, with me. How about you? How's things with you?
Yeah, good. Busy. Just coming off the back of a gig last night, which we were just talking about. Did a wedding gig last night in Northampton, so a bit tired, a bit weary from that today, but I'm all good. Good. I've been really busy with work this last week as well, so having to do quite a bit of overtime has just meant that I've just not had time to do any guitar playing other than practicing, a few numbers for this wedding gig I had last night, but hoping to spend a bit more time over the coming weeks to do a bit more just practice and get back onto my kind of practice routine that I instigated a little bit for myself of, trying to focus in on a few areas and, learn some things that I haven't really worked on previously. So yeah, good. I'm good, mate. I'm good.
Did you find yourself doing a lot of practicing and kind of boning up on some numbers for the Depp wedding gig that you did? Was that fairly intensive, or did you know pretty much all the stuff going into that gig this week?
So I knew most of the songs. There were some I had to learn, which is fine, simple enough. But I find I have to. It depends on the nature of the wedding gig. So the band that I say a debt with, I think I get the first call from the band anyway.
Yeah.
But because it's like a wedding band through an agency, it's always a band of deps. It's never really it's not a rehearsed band. It's people get the call, you learn the songs, you go and do the gig. But depending on the nature of the setup of the band for the gig, sometimes it goes out with full horn section, keys, guitar, 2 singers, and it's a big. And I really quite like those because I can find a place to kind of sit in the sound of everything, and you go through the set list and you think, okay, so what does the guitar do in this song? And I know that this part's covered by the keys and whatnot. But sometimes they go out as a cheaper band, basically, where it's just guitar, bass and drums and the 2 singers. fingers. And that's what last night's gig was. So I have to go back over the set again and think, well, I can't just play the guitar part in some song. I've got to try and amalgamate a keys and a guitar part in certain areas. I actually find it really stressful because it can be exhausting trying to carry some songs harmonically for the band on just guitar when the original might have two guitars, keys and horns. And I can't play all of that. I've got to make choices about what I play. And I know that if I make mistakes, if I drop the ball at any point, there's going to be these like vacuums of areas in the songs where it doesn't sound right because it's just bass and drums all of a sudden. So I find those gigs a lot more stressful. So even though I tend to know the songs, I spend a lot of time practicing my parts. You know, it becomes more of a parts gig rather than kind of just trying to do some guitar things within the mix. You know, you've got to try and figure out, forget you're the guitar at the moment. What do you have to do harmonically to make this song carry itself enough? Like one of the songs was what's the Ed Sheeran song? Shape of You, which has got like this marimba part beginning, or like xylophone, whatever, which is the riff, and obviously acoustic guitar underneath. Exactly. Yeah. This is a really simple song, right? But that marimba part's not that actually, you know, it's not that brilliant to play on guitar. It sounds a bit weak. So I'm having to do something rhythmically with the guitar playing to kind of simulate that so that people kind of know what the song is, while still trying to also carry that acoustic rhythm guitar part that goes on underneath it. So it's not hugely complicated, but that gives you an idea of the approach I have to take. I have to go back through songs and take a different approach to things that I already know. Even things like, for example, when we do Summer of '69. So obviously that's a nice, easy song. I like playing that. But there's a guitar solo, isn't there, after the last chorus kind of thing that's playing on in the background?
There is, yeah.
So I'm then thinking, well, if I play a guitar solo, there's nothing happening in the background other than bass and drums. So I'm playing, it's just over D and A the whole time. Those are the chords. Yeah. And so I'm just, whatever I'm soloing, I'm just making sure I'm letting the D string play open or the A string play. So just little things like that, to just constantly worried about, am I filling enough harmonic space? Whereas when we go out with keys and horns, it's like, I need to just pull back and enjoy myself a little bit more, find places to play, because everyone's doing that, trying to fill harmonic space. So last night was just guitar, and I found it really stressful and exhausting, let alone the fact that for some reason there was a radiator on full blast next to the stage, so they're just sweating
in the middle of summer.
Ridiculous. And then you're like, we can't turn it off. Of course you can turn it off. You've got a boiler somewhere. It's not some kind of volcanic, lava running through there that's coming up from the crust of the earth. You can't stop. It's a radiator. Ridiculous.
It's like that episode of Friends where they can't turn the radiator off.
Yeah. Exactly that. Anyway, but other than that, I'm all good, mate. I'm all good.
So those wedding gigs that you're talking about, or those gigs where you're trying to just fill in all the parts, that is a lot of hard work, and it's kind of mentally draining, as you say as well, because you can't often just enjoy playing the songs, because you've got to continuously make sure you're filling the void. I definitely know what you mean. I've got a gig this weekend. Thankfully, it's only a 1 hour set at a beer festival, so it's going to be quite a few hundred people there. But we've got a dep drummer, which is one added thing, but that's fine. I think he's learned the parts, but there's only one guitar on it, and I'm kind of like, the numbers that we've chosen as well, they're not one guitar songs. They are going to sound sparse. So I've really got to spend some time on Saturday just trying to figure out how to get some of those parts to work with just one guitar, but they are going to sound very sparse, which is a shame. I think there's a lot to be said for choosing the right songs where you can pull that kind of thing off.
Absolutely.
And recognizing where there's some songs where you just can't do it. We've just accepted a gig on New Year's Eve as well, which is always nice, because New Year's Eve is a big payer, right? For most bands. So I didn't want to turn that one down either, because that'd be quite good, and it's a good night out. But again, that's only going to be one guitar, because our other guitarist is going to be away in Italy at the time. So, but now I'm thinking, I'm wondering if I can convince the band to get another guitarist in for that gig, because doing 2 hours worth of those numbers as one guitarist is just going to be exhausting. But yeah, interesting.
I think there's plenty of situations where one guitar works, but it's like you say, you've got to be selective about what tracks work. And I'm going to make some more suggestions to this band that I debt with about, songs that I think will work much better than others in situations where, we go out as just basically a three-piece. Forget the singers. It's a three-piece band. It's just a trio. So some stuff just doesn't work. Like we did things like what's the Bruno Mars track?
Locked Out of Heaven.
No, the funky one with Mark Ronson. I can't forget the names of all songs. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Downtown Funk. What's it called?
The opposite. Uptown Funk.
Sorry, wrong part of town.
Wrong part of town,
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah, Uptown Funk, which we did last night. But there's no that's think about that song, how many horns parts and, there's some keys parts as well in there and some kind of synthy stuff going on in that build up to the chorus. None of that last night. It was just the bass. I mean, why put that in the set?
Yeah.
Well, and I said before we get, we'll just kind of groove it out. But it just sounded so empty.
Yeah.
It's so empty. But anyway, let's move on, shall we? Shall we get on to this week's topic? Conversation?
Definitely.
Sorry to interrupt this super interesting conversation. However, if you've made it this far, maybe you should subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. Go and do that now, and then let's get right back to it.
So we thought it'd be off the back of our chat last week. This is almost kind of like the next part of the conversation, right? So we were discussing recently the art of the live album, right, and some of the great live albums that inspire us to play guitar and ones that really excite us. Those recordings of the gigs that you wish you'd been at because it's just been captured so well. So we had a good chat about that. And then we thought this week, as a kind of continuation of that, it would be good to have a chat about albums in general, right? Now, this has the tendency, mate, I think, to veer into two middle-aged men grumbling about yesteryear. So we've got to try really hard not to go down that path, right? But the question that we often kind of chat about, right, as avid guitarists and people that like listening to music in general, is does anyone listen to entire albums anymore? Is the album dead? Like, clearly music is not dead, but have we now, with the advent of streaming music, which is super convenient and arguably how I listen to probably 90% of music on a day-to-day basis. It's all streamed through Spotify or what have you. It's super convenient, but has that meant that we have now a very throwaway, almost kind of flippant relationship with how we consume music, insofar as it creates a short attention span and we just jump from one track to the next at the flick of a button or what have you on your iPhone? And does that mean that as listeners, we're not consuming music to listen to an entire compilation of songs put together as an album piece? Does it mean that artists aren't even creating stuff like that anymore? And so we thought it'd be good to have a chat about that whole thing, and then maybe talk about some of the great guitar albums that we like, not just because they've got one or two great tracks on the album, but because as an entire composition, the album itself works as a body of work, and is something that we get excited to listen to from start to finish, I guess, rather than just dipping into the odd track. And so I thought that'd be quite a good one for us to have a chat about.
Yeah, it's great. It's really topical as well, I think, because there's definitely something different about the way artists present their music now as well, given that the consumption method is so different. Like you say, everybody really, I listen to all my music through streaming services, even though I own a lot of music on albums, even though I've bought a lot of music on iTunes over the years. And you can kind of consider iTunes a streaming service as well, right? Because I can listen to my music anywhere that I've bought from iTunes, but I could download it if I wanted. I've bought so many albums over the years, but I still don't listen to it on iTunes now. It's on Spotify. And I think the key thing for me is I'm kind of making my own albums all the time, like playlists, effectively it's making your own album. That's an album you actually want to listen to. Maybe you like Stevie Wonder. Maybe you go down to Stevie Wonder Hall, and instead of listening to all his albums or jumping from album to album, you make a playlist of all the stuff you like that he does. And then when you want to listen to Stevie Wonder, you listen to that playlist. So think about the process of doing that before there was streaming services or before you could purchase your music online. What would that be like? You'd be getting all your Stevie Wonder albums out, and you'd be playing, if you'd chosen one or two songs from each album, you'd be forever changing records and CDs. And that's not a convenient consumption method, is it, when you've got a physical hard copy of the music? Whereas if you're streaming, you can create a queue of music that you want to listen to at any particular time. You can listen to a playlist you've already made. You can create new playlists. You can collaborate on playlists with friends. I think the method of consumption is so different now that I think this is why you see a lot of artists just release singles that aren't attached to albums, and then they attach them to an album at some point in the future. It's like they're not even really holding on to their music anymore. They're not building up a collection of music over time and releasing it. It's like they're doing, you see a lot of artists doing, John Mayer, for example, his last album, Sob Rock. Yeah. I think there's at least 3 tracks on that album that he'd released as singles over the last 3 or 4 years, and he now just attached them to this record, which is kind of like the opposite, right? Why would you release individual tracks first and then attach them to an album? And I guess that's the consumption method. That's get your music out there for people to listen to, because this is how people listen to music. I mean, what about you? How do you listen to, are you the same as me now? Do you tend to consume music through playlists and, or do you still sit down with music and put music on? Yeah,
so I try to be disciplined and make sure that I spend time to sit down and listen to music properly. Do I mean properly? I mean, right. Let me kind of chat about some of the things that I do. Right. So I have, and to this day, am clinging on to a nice collection of CDs that I've accumulated through the years and bought at various points in my life, and more latterly in my life, probably only in the last 8 to 10 years, I've got into vinyl. So inherited or was gifted by my dad a huge amount of brilliant original vinyl records that he had, and then I've started building my own collection of these up. Right now, I'm also a bit of not too crazy, but I like listening to music on the best possible kind of equipment I can afford and things. So like I have a passion for audiophile quality music and trying to listen to it as best as I can. So I've got a nice hi-fi, etc., that I listen to music on. And now, like you, probably 80-90% of what I sit and listen to of an evening is streamed, because actually, if you stream it at some of the higher bit rates, it's really super convenient. I can stream directly with my phone in my hand, and that connects wirelessly to my AV receiver, and that sends it in very beautiful quality to my nice hi-fi system, right? So I'm still experiencing it in a very, very pleasing way. But even having said that, mate, when you put a CD in and play it through the same system, there's no comparison. The CD quality just blows the streaming quality away. The nuance of what you can hear is just superb. So for me, CD is still the pinnacle of recording and playing back music. So I still keep a really nice CD collection, and when I've got the time, I'll be able to sit down there and put an album on and listen to an album in its entirety. And actually, my CD player is quite an old one now, but still works beautifully. And when kind of manufacturers were still investing a lot of time and money into putting really good components into CD players, so it's it does its job superbly well. It's a hi-fi separate one, and it doesn't have a remote control with it. So when I put a CD on in it, I have to sit down on the sofa, press play, and listen to the album. Yeah. So I can't skip songs. So I'm therefore forced to listen to the album. Yeah. Which I think in of itself is something really disciplined to be able to do and force yourself yourself out of that habit of going, next track,
Yeah.
or even just jumping to a completely different genre or artist or albums. And vinyl, very much the same thing. I mean, there's been a huge resurgence of vinyl for many people. And, that's a different kind of experience again. The sound quality people wax lyrical about. I've got, again, a nice turntable, but I think CD still, trumps it. But there is something nice about listening to vinyl. But the whole process of taking the vinyl out of its sleeve, looking at the album art, kind of reading the sleeve notes, sitting there listening to it and knowing that in order to skip ahead a track or to change to another album, you've got to physically get up and spend the next 2 to 3 minutes doing that. You just don't. So you kind of force yourself to listen to the album. And when you do that, you have a very different experience and you discover songs and listen to songs in a more meaningful way, I think.
I think so too. I think there's definitely a, what's the word? Not tangible. Something, maybe it is tangible. I don't know what the word is. Something physical about being, connected to that physical thing, that you're putting down on your turntable and you're moving your needle over to it. And you know that what's happening is that the crazy thing to think about when you're listening to a vinyl record is how that sound is getting from the vinyl to the speakers. You just think, this is incredible. And I don't think anything sounds as good. I disagree with you. I don't think CDs are better than vinyl. I think.
Do you not? You like vinyl?
It depends. Through a great audiophile system, there's no dust on the record. There's no scratches. You've got a perfect stylus, and it's a good turntable. That's not transferring motor noise through the needle. Something really expensive. Like I don't know. But anyway, what you're getting is you're getting exactly what was intended to go onto that album, especially if you know that the music was recorded on tape, and was mastered through tape, and then got pressed onto vinyl through, via that kind of, mastering process. No digital was involved. Not that I have a problem with digital. I think it's great. No. I wouldn't listen to music the way I'd do if I did, but the reason I'm saying about these analog methods is because then what you get on your record is what was intended to be heard from the studio, because there isn't any digital sampling process that is effectively removing information. There's more information in a vinyl than there is on a CD, whether you think that 44.1 kilohertz sampling process, well, that's so much information, but yes, but it is, but it's technically less than what's on a vinyl.
But it's still a sampling process. It's still taking sampling. Whatever it can, rather than the full spectrum.
It might be 44,100 times a second taking a sample, but that still means there's information missing. So even if a vinyl sounds to your ears, not as good as a CD, to my mind, it's what was intended to be heard. It represents more what was intended to be heard by the artist and the producer than a CD.
I think you're right. And what I should probably clarify is I think the scenario that you're describing with vinyl is more difficult to obtain than with a CD. With a CD, arguably, so long as it's not scratched too bad, you put it in and it will play pristinely. So it's more predictable and reliable to get that high quality sound. With vinyl, particularly buying secondhand vinyls now, and, ones that are kind of not very well pressed or, just not very well cared for, you can sometimes be distracted from the experience you're wanting to have because the quality of the vinyl isn't great. But when I put on some of the ones that my dad gave me when he looked after his vinyl really nicely, and these are properly, heavyweight vinyls that were very well, pressed and originally recorded on tape, and then mastered onto vinyl, you listen to those and it's a mind-blowing experience of listening to them. I mean, I remember putting on Stevie Wonder's Hotter Than July and then listening to that album and just being blown away by the sound of, and it still sounds incredible. I mean, so I would agree with you actually, when you can get that equipment, set up really nicely and have a really nice record that plays really well. It's not scratched, it's not covered in dust or whatever. It's playing it back nicely. There is something again with vinyl, and I think, I don't know, what do you think the resurgence in vinyl? So here's the thing. I was out shopping for the first time in probably years, because everything that I've been doing with shopping in recent years is online, right? And lockdown lockdown aside, I still hate shopping physically, and most stuff I'll just order online. But we were out in a town centre yesterday, and I went into a kind of chain record store, all right, which, I went into 2 record stores yesterday. So this is really topical and timely for this conversation. I'll tell you about some of the things that I experienced and witnessed yesterday, which were really relevant to this conversation. But I went into HMV, which one I didn't realize they still had stores going, because I thought they all went under.
Yeah, so did I. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so Guildford has still got an HMV. So I went into HMV yesterday in Guildford and was pottering around there. And I used to frequent this store, when it was kind of at its peak, arguably probably a couple of decades ago now, where, there was no streaming. So you went there to kind of get your media. The vinyl section in there is huge now.
Is it really?
It's huge. It was bigger than I ever had seen, before. And there were more people looking at the new. This is new vinyl, because they don't do secondhand stuff. There was more people looking at the new vinyl, and it wasn't cheap. These were £20 a vinyl record. So that's
wow.
Kind of what, 25, $30 per vinyl. Okay, it's new stuff. This is probably stuff that hasn't been recorded on tape. This is digital. Right? This has been digitally recorded and then put onto vinyl. So, and people, they were there buying it at that price. And you go, well, I bet all of you have got Spotify or iTunes in your pocket.
Yeah.
And yet you are handing over good money for these vinyl recordings. So I don't know, what is it? Are people going home, and do they have these high quality hi-fi systems that we're talking about, and they're putting it on there and they're going, this sounds better? Or is there something about that physical act of purchasing a record and physically owning it that is making a comeback? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think there's an element of a generational time span here, in that we're now at a point where we're so far down the road with the internet and streaming that you've got generations of people who are probably in their late teens and early 20s who have never known what it's like to listen to music from a hard copy, potentially, especially vinyl. If you're 16 or 15 now, and you're starting to, you might have an out of school job that's giving you, money to spend on. You like music and you want to listen to music. You've never done anything other than listen to it through YouTube and streaming services. If you're that age, you may have had a few CDs when you were younger. So vinyl to those people is probably like a new thing. They probably don't even know that it's been around for a long time. Or if they do, it's old enough for it to be new to them. And I think there's an element of that, and a generational gap where people are seeing it as something interesting and new rather than a resurgence of something that's old. And like I said, especially these days where, the technology for listening to vinyls is still, you still get really good turntables and amps and speakers. And it's not like you have to go on eBay to buy an old turntable. People are still making really good stuff. I mean, like companies like, I think it's Wilson Benesh, you can buy turntables from them that cost tens of thousands of pounds because they're so well balanced and handmade with, diamond styluses and things like that. The technology for listening to vinyl is as good as it's ever been. So the listening experience must still be superb, the right technology. And
I agree.
Sitting down late on a Friday night with, maybe a little glass of, single malt, putting on a new record and just sitting there and having an experience that's infinitely better than, your iPhone earpods and on the train. It's a different experience for people. I think that must be part of it. It can't just be,
I hope it is,
a fad. Oh, the vinyl. I'm going to buy a vinyl and put it on a shelf. I hope it's resurging because people are reappreciating the listening experience as being a physical thing you do rather than just something you put on when you're on the bus. I hope. That's my answer to that question.
Well, yeah, I think you make a couple of really great points in there. One, the equipment is readily available. It's never been a better time to get into vinyl or even CD because the quality of stuff out there is really good at an affordable price. I mean, my turntable was only a few £100, and it's incredible. It's exceptional. It sounds beautiful. And yesterday in this chain record store that I'm talking about, this music music store. I mean, predominantly what it sells is DVDs and Blu-rays, but they had this huge vinyl section and a somewhat dwindling CD section. But this store was selling turntables. I was like, I've never seen that before in that store. They had a section where you could go and buy turntables. I'm like, okay, something's going on. So that was an interesting observation piece. Can I tell you about the second record store that I went to?
Yeah, of course. I'm hoping it's, if you went to Guildford, I'm hoping it's Ben's Records, maybe off the high street.
It was Ben's Collector's Records.
Amazing.
I've got to give that place a shout out.
I haven't been there for years.
Oh, man.
Last time I went there, the guy made me a cup of tea.
Yep.
Is this for you?
Oh, man. So I haven't been for a couple of years, right? I went there when I first started collecting vinyl a few years ago, and I bought some great Clapton albums. Yeah. And we've got a huge global listening audience now, so you're going to have to either come over to the UK and go to this store in Guildford, which if you're wondering where you've heard Guildford before, if you're listening abroad, that's also the same town in the UK where Anderton's guitar store is located. So if you're a guitarist looking for a trip to the UK, pop into Guildford.
Gotta go to Guildford. Go to Anderton's.
Right. Go to Anderton's, do that. But once you've done that, go over to Ben's Collector's Records on the high street there. Yeah. It is a tiny little Aladdin's Cave of joy. And
it's amazing. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
Mate, right. So I was with my lovely wife yesterday, and we're pottering in and around the shop, something we haven't done for years. Mum and Dad had the kids, and she was looking in a department store of some sort, looking at, I don't know, household bits and pieces. And I said to her, I'm just going to nip over to the record store across the road and go in there. And I went in there, and it was just, as soon as I stepped in through that little doorway of this Aladdin's Cave, and it is stocked from floor to ceiling with just so much vinyl, CDs. It's vinyl and CDs. That's pretty much it, right? That's pretty much all that's in there. It's kind of organized in a kind of way, but in many ways it's not. You've got to just flick through everything and look for what. And my wife, to her credit, kind of passed the door. She said to me later, she passed the door a couple of times when she'd finished looking at what she was looking at. And in the end, she didn't give me a call on the phone, or she didn't kind of, say, are you done yet? Because she could see the look on my face. She just took herself off to a coffee shop down the road and went and got a coffee and a slice of cake. And because she knew I'd gone down a rabbit hole. She just said the look on your face was just like, and I was having an experience, mate. I was flicking through all the vinyl albums. The guy, I presume it's Ben. He's putting on music, and it's great music, man. He's playing it, on the speakers in this tiny little store. It kind of reminds me of a really non-pretentious, smaller version of like the record shop out of High Fidelity, right? That film, where everyone in the store is there because they love music, and it was busy yesterday in such a tiny store, so everyone had face masks on because of COVID. And I'm in my own little world, just like getting really involved and looking through all these albums going, and trying to remember, have I got that one or not? Because this is a really great, clean copy of it. And everything's cheap in there. It's like every CD is like £3, right? And most vinyl is like, well, it's all very reasonably priced. So, but one of the things that struck me was there were conversations happening in that record store between strangers, between complete strangers, right? And they were beautiful conversations that I was observing and listening to. These were total strangers who were in proximity to each other, witnessing what other people were looking at and flicking through, and through no need for any introduction or any kind of social awkwardness, they would just start a conversation going, that's a great album. Have you got that one? Have you heard it? Like, no, but I've heard about it. Oh, no, it's a really great album. Oh, what kind of music are you into? Oh, if you like this is another great album. And all of a sudden there was this social thing going on, and it wasn't just happening with one person and another person. You could look around this tiny little store and see these little conversations happening between people, and then the record store owner himself kind of interjecting with stuff, and everything that everybody was purchasing, he was having a conversation with them about. That's a really good version, or that track on that album is brilliant. And there are hundreds of thousands of records.
It's unbelievable. It is literally stacked floor to ceiling, isn't it, in areas? I mean, one of my favourite memories of going to Ben's Records is just that too, having the conversation. You can't go in there and not have a conversation. It's impossible.
Totally.
You know, they will engage you in conversation because they're passionate about it too. But just like, what's in that box down there on the floor? And he's like, pull it out. Just have a look through it. Because it's not like, it isn't like you say, it's not organised. It's organised in his head for sure.
Yeah.
He probably knows where everything is and could find, if you ask for something, you could probably find it within moments. But it is like, you have to go searching. You can't just go in and pick something off the shelf, because you can't just go and buy a Metallica record by going to M in the CDs and then finding Metallica. That's the one I want. Off you go. You have to go through, you have to search. And I'm sure most people that go to Ben's Records don't know what they're going to come out with, because they're going in there for the experience of see what I can find that I want to buy. So it's a completely different experience, isn't it? Going to little record shops like that are just the best. It was
amazing. I bought some stuff which I was going to show you here in my little bag of goodies. As I always do, I go into any record store looking to find a really nice, clean, original copy of Fleetwood Mac, Rumours. It's one that I don't own and want. But then after about 10, 15 minutes in Ben's Records looking yesterday for that, I forgot that I was even looking for that and went down, as I generally tend to do, like a massive Clapton hole of just going, I haven't got this one, or I haven't got that one, or do I own this one? So I bought one piece of vinyl and I bought one CD as well. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to see that the CD section in Ben's Records, also all secondhand, but all in really good condition, is thriving as well, because I do like listening to CDs. So this I bought, which I think you will like, and you'll have to borrow off me. I don't even know if it's on Spotify. I'm not even going to look, because I don't want that experience to be ruined. But if it is on Spotify, I'm not going to listen to it on Spotify. I'm going to listen to it on this. So this is a double album of Eric Clapton live at the Budokan.
So early 2000s, I'm guessing, something. Yeah,
2001.
Reptile tour, looking at because he played that guitar on Reptile.
Your knowledge is strong. Your knowledge is so strong, Mr. Matthew Oliver. Exactly right. And this 2001 concert is exactly that, right? So
Somewhere Over the Rainbow is the encore. I'm sure, maybe
it is. Yeah. Wow, you are wise.
I don't have that, but I watched him with my dad. Me and my dad watched him on that tour when he did a world tour. He came to Manchester. We went to see him at the Manchester Arena doing that. So I got a good memory of that tour. He had a great band.
So it's that tour, and I'd heard that the Budokan, the Tokyo gig of this was great. Yeah. I think somebody said the version of 5 Long Years that he does on that is just superb. But I mean, it's got an incredible array of his greatest hits that he's performing on this, and it's Andy Fairweather Low on second guitar, Nathan East, Steve Gadd, Greg Fillinganes. It's the Clapton band that you want to be listening to. So that is heavy. I've got a gig tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm going to sit down with a glass of whiskey, put that on, and listen to that, and just be happier than anything. So yeah, that was that first purchase. Mint condition this is in, mate. The CDs are pristine. The case is beautiful. £4.
What?
Yeah,
is that a double album as well?
Double album, and it's mint. £4. Do you see? That's just a pleasure, isn't it?
It's brilliant.
So I bought that, and then this is more for me than for you. But I bought a Guns N' Roses album.
Amazing.
Which is, to my knowledge, pretty rare, actually, because it is their concert live at the Ritz in Hollywood, in New York, from 1988, which was basically their first foray into kind of mainstream popularity. So it's basically Appetite for Destruction performed live when these songs were first formed, and they were basically touring this first album before they became massive. And I've not seen this. I've not seen this album before. I've heard some of the recordings on the internet and things, but to have it on vinyl,
Is it still in its polythene wrap?
Yeah.
It's never been listened to then. So it's not even.
No.
That's probably an original pressing that's never been listened to.
Oh, I don't think it's an original pressing,
Right,
but
okay.
it's an old. This was pressed in 2015.
Wow.
So it's obviously been bought and not opened since then. So limited to 500 copies. It says so. Pressed in 2015. Limited to 500 copies. And it's mint. And so as a GNR fan, to have a copy of that on vinyl,
cool.
and I've never seen it, but Ben's Records had it. Flicked through a few boxes and found like, what is this? there it is. There it is. So yeah, and that was more expensive. That was £15, but. What's 15 quid for an album that I've never seen before?
That's what music should be worth, that, shouldn't it? It shouldn't just be worth $9.99 a month for a premium membership. You know, if you're buying an album, and man, do you think, see, a serious question now, do you think the joy of buying that album, going to that place and having that experience, do you think that's going to augment your enjoyment of listening to it as well?
For sure. Not only that, but I've got down like a bookmark in my life of when I bought these albums and a story behind it. So these albums are infinitely going to be more meaningful to me because of the story of how I acquired them. Yeah. The fact that we've spoken about it. And I don't know if you realize what I've actually done, though, inadvertently, but based on our conversation last week, I've just gone and bought 2 albums of 2 live gigs that I wish I'd been at.
Yes.
Right. So, and that's what we were chatting about last week.
That's absolutely right.
And that's what I've gone and bought. Not intentionally, but clearly, obviously, because of our conversation last week, I kind of went into this thing after I found the Budokan thing. I was like, oh, what else is in here, which is live stuff? But I wasn't consciously thinking about it. But so yeah. And then I sat on the train on the way home, kind of looking through the notes of it. I hadn't even listened to it yet. I haven't even experienced what I've purchased, but I'm experiencing the kind of carrying it home in the bag and sitting on the train, just reading through the sleeve notes and going, right, who is this band? Yeah. And inside like the Clapton one, there's like a lot of notes about what this concert was all about, some background on Clapton, some stuff about his career. There's stuff there, right?
Yes.
Which, you know, it probably, I'm sure there's bits on Amazon Music or Spotify that you can click on to learn more about the songs you're listening to, but none of us do, right? Yeah. We just consume the music and then move on. So,
well, I've got 2 thoughts actually. Do you know what? Two which seem to me personally at least quite, you know, profound, which is one, it making me realize, you know, the experience that you're having with vinyl and going out and purchasing these things and how much of a good experience, and it's adding to your listening experience. It's making me realize how flippantly we treat music now because of streaming services being so easy. You know, you skip through things, you can just make your own playlist, just pick and choose songs as if they're just, you know, like it's fast food. And I worry now that I've spent too much time being flippant about listening to music and it being too much of a passive thing, and whether or not that's feeding into my guitar playing as well. And I really feel now, after you've talked to me about that experience and having those things, I mean, you're looking at them and reading them and interacting with them, and I feel like I need to make a plan, because I've got a box of vinyl in the loft, been in the loft for years.
Have you?
Yeah, because I haven't had a turntable for years. You know, I've never really dedicated a space for listening to music. I've got a box of probably 60, 70 vinyl albums that have not been listened to for years. And I'd really like to, I think I need to make a plan to get a turntable and an amp and some speakers and get those out and start listening to them and maybe adding to the collection, because, you know, I feel really inspired after what you've said about your experience going to Ben's Records and, you know, how you feel about that process, to kind of think I should treat listening to music with a bit more respect, with a bit less of a flippant nature of it just being something I just turn Spotify on and pick something and play. It should be better than that, shouldn't it?
I think so, mate. And it's really lovely to hear you say that reflection, because that's exactly a really eloquent summary of how I feel about it, right? To the point where both my kids, I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old. My 7-year-old, for the last couple of years, has a CD player, a little CD player music system by his bedside. And one of the things that I've always wanted him to do, because I did when I was younger, was to be able to listen to music at night time as a way to kind of chill out and, help get to sleep and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, it was nursery rhymes and lullabies for a long time. But from the beginning, he has always listened to Clapton, John Mayer stuff, and just my music, right? Now he's old enough to kind of figure out what he likes, and he is very capable of figuring out what he likes listening to. We have a thing where he once a week can go and pick a couple or 3 CDs out of my CD collection, almost like a library. Yeah. Return the ones that he borrowed from the previous week, and go and listen to those albums. Now he knows what Alexa is. He knows what Spotify is, because he uses them in the car with us. There's Alexa and all of that around the house. But his preferred way to listen to music at the age of 7 now is to go and borrow some of Dad's CDs. Yeah. And as soon as he's got his new ones for the week, he runs upstairs and he sits on his bed and he puts them on, and he figures out if he likes the album or not, or what songs he likes, and he flicks through the sleeve notes in the CDs and he reads it, because he's obviously at an age now where he can read, so he reads about it. And at 7 years old, his taste in music now, obviously heavily influenced by me, but now he's finding his own taste in music and discovering CDs that I didn't think he would like, or I would never have put into his hands. And he's loving them. And, me and my wife were discussing this and going, it's so nice that he's getting to experience music in this way. And I said to her, it's not going to be long before, he will start to consume music in a very disposable fashion like we all do. But I just want him to have this experience of consuming it in a way that is more respectful to the album and listening to the entirety of it and listening to artists' kind of bodies of work rather than just, 1 or 2 of their hits. So if I've done nothing else right with my child, and I hope I have, but if I haven't, then that's one thing that I'll be pleased that we've done is, and now our 5-year-old's starting to follow suit as well. And it's a really nice respect for music that they've got, which I'm really pleased about.
That's great. That's really great. Well, I think I feel like this conversation's evolved into something a little bit more than maybe we kind of first thought we would be talking. We were going to be talking just about albums in general, and if listening to it changed. But I think we've really got down to something which I certainly miss in my life, which is the experience of listening to music, the process involved of sitting down with it being the primary thing that you're doing at that time. Most of the time, 90% of the time for me, unless even if I'm learning music for a song, that's not the primary thing I'm doing is playing guitar and learning something. I'm not experiencing it. I'm stopping and starting. Otherwise, music is something I have as kind of an umbrella over what I'm doing, whether I'm working, whatever, or I'm doing something in the house and music's on the Alexa or whatever. And it's never the primary thing I'm doing anymore. It's something in the background. It might be quite loud in the background. I might still be enjoying it whilst I'm working or while I'm driving or something, but it's never something I sit down to do as a primary thing. And I'm realizing now how much I miss that, because I did used to do that when it was a physical thing you had to put on, whether it was a CD or a record, and I'd sit down and listen to that record. You watch it turn as well. Something really romantic about a record being a tiny little needle being placed down on a record and seeing it turn and music come out of it. I really miss that experience. But can we talk again before we finish? Can we talk about specific albums?
Shall we just have a quick run through of some of the albums that we would recommend to people to maybe sit and listen to the whole album and do exactly what you just said, which is have some protected time where you're not doing something else other than just sitting and listening to music. Because there's some great albums which I think lend themselves to this, so that you can just sit down, pour yourself a glass of wine, pour yourself a whiskey or whatever, make a cup of tea if you don't drink, whatever it is, serious. Just sit down of an evening and get into it and use this as a way to relax and chill out and not have it as a secondary thing to something else you're doing, right? And I think there's a few albums, not necessarily chill out albums, but just albums that are great to listen to in their entirety to get that kind of experience of enjoying music as the sole activity. So yeah, what's the album that springs to mind for you when you think of, I just want to listen to that album, not just a couple of songs. I want to experience that whole album from start to finish.
Well, yeah, exactly. So you're right. So some of these albums they don't have songs on them that I would count as being like, it's not like, this is the album that some of my favorite songs are from, so therefore I'm recommending this album.
Yeah.
There are some albums for me that make more sense as a complete works. They're more than the sum of their parts kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
You listen to it from beginning to end and it feels like a complete work. So for me, some albums you've probably not heard me speak about before with this kind of affection, but 10 Summoners Tales by Sting is one for me that is just, I can't really dip in and out of that album. There are some great songs on there, but that as a complete work from beginning to end for me is just astonishing as a record. And that's one that I don't think I ever listen to that unless I'm listening to the whole thing from beginning to end. It's incredible.
Yeah, you win. Totally. and that was a great podcast this week. No, in all seriousness, no, that is a superb album. From start to finish.
What about you? Because I've got a few. Should we go backwards and forwards, or have you got what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I made a quick list. I'm just going to throw these out there, and then people can go and listen to them, because of course a lot of this is based on your own musical taste, and but I think all of these have got a good, strong guitar connection. So for our audience, if you're into guitar playing, irrespective of genre of guitar music that you like, I think these are some of the albums. So first one for me that sprang to mind, because it was the first CD that I ever bought with my own money when I had a paper round, and it was Nirvana's Nevermind. I think is look, it's not an album to sit there and necessarily relax to, but as an album that works in terms of a complete composition and takes you on different journeys emotionally, from very heavy kind of upbeat songs through to some more kind of sober songs. That is a great album for that band, I think, as a composition really and piece of work.
And amazing sound as well. Incredible production, I think, on that album. Really brilliant sounding. So not in your face necessarily, just big sounding album. Great.
It is for what was effectively a 3-piece band, right? A trio. It sounds monstrous. And it's very well recorded. I'm going to cover some of the obvious ones, right? So here's 3 obvious ones, and then I'll jump back to you. 3 obvious ones that I've mentioned before. The Black Album by Metallica, I think is beautifully constructed as an album. And if you've ever watched the documentary of how they put that album together, there was deliberate thought and choice about each of the songs, where they sat on the album, the listening order, but more importantly, if they weren't good enough and they didn't fit with the album and what the album was trying to achieve, then they didn't make it onto that album. So I think that is an incredible album to listen to.
And I would say that's a seminal album for the genre as well, I think.
Yeah.
Heavy metal and some thrash metal and stuff. That, I think everyone in that genre benefited from that album, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. The band, none more so than Metallica themselves, right? It launched them into they felt they were taking a risk with that album, but turned out to be probably one of the best things they did in terms of taking the band to a new audience. Texas Flood, Stevie Ray Vaughan, that's again a seminal album, but it's got some beautiful classic blues numbers on there, as well as some incredible sophisticated playing moments with tracks like Lenny and things. Appetite for Destruction I've mentioned already. That again is a tour de force album from start to finish. So those are my obvious ones, and then I've got a few like maybe less obvious ones. But what about you? Where would you go next after 10 Summoners Tales?
So for me, another album I think is a fantastic piece of work beginning to end is Hotel California California by the Eagles. Just superb songwriting, superb guitar playing throughout. But the thing that I love the most about that album is the vocals and the vocal harmonies throughout some of the, I mean, New Kid in Town, you just listen to that and just listen to the vocal harmonies that are done by that band throughout that song. And remember that that's a time when there was no, auto-tune or correction that could be done like that. But they are perfect. It's like a pad of sound throughout some of the songs. I just love listening to that album because the performance by the band is superb. The songwriting's just astonishing. They all sing, they all songwrite, there's some songs sung by, Randy, the bassist, some by, the guitarist, some is Don Henley. It's not all Don Henley who's doing the singing. It's just such a great example of a band at their peak. It's the first album that Joe Walsh was the guitarist for them as well. So it was a great example of his songwriting too. And beautiful songs in that album. It's a really great listen from beginning to end. I have
a copy of that on vinyl that I must say I haven't listened to from start to finish yet.
I
got from my dad. My dad's given me, that was part of the stuff that was handed to me. When you come round, I'll show you some of the stuff he's given me and you will weep. It's like original Hendrix recordings of like Electric Ladyland, Hotel California. These are the original albums in really great condition. That's
a great one to listen to.
I'll go and put that on in a minute.
You have to. There's some songs on that which are just stunningly beautiful, like Wasting Time and Pretty Maids All in a Row. Stuff that they never released as singles are not that well known, that are just still beautifully, recorded and written songs. So Hotel California, another one for me, which is beautiful beginning to end, is A Night at the Opera by Queen.
Oh, great album.
Amazing. So many good recordings on there, some beautiful songs. Good Company's amazing, which is basically Brian May playing guitar but sounding like a New Orleans jug band. And then there's obviously Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yes.
Oh, what's the one that Freddie Mercury sings? Love of My Life is just amazing.
What a song. This was their difficult second album, wasn't it? After the success of Killer Queen and stuff like that. This was the one that they struggled with the songs that came off of that album.
It's for me, that's one of the best rock albums of all time. But again, it's one of those which is greater than the sum of its parts when listened to beginning to end. It seems to make more sense as a complete works rather than its individual tracks, And I love the fact that they end the album with the national anthem, which is what they did in the opera. That's why they did that at the end of the album, because it's called A Night at the Opera. You go to an opera in London, any opera ends with the national anthem. So they did that for the album. It's so cool that they did that.
That's amazing.
And the last, another one for me, I do have some others, but I'll just throw another one in quickly. Abbey Road by the Beatles.
Great.
Top to bottom. I mean, the last 6 or 7 tracks are like a medley of songs anyway, and it just, that's just a great album to listen to, top to bottom. Amazing.
Right, a few more recommendations from me then. In no particular order, I'd encourage our audience to go and listen to some of these as complete albums. So, Are You Gonna Go My Way? Kravitz album, Lenny Kravitz album. That everyone knows that track, but go and listen to the rest of the album, and it is just a beautiful piece of work to go and listen to from start to finish. He had a vision with that album, and I think it doesn't do it justice to just go and listen to that title track. The rest of the album is
I've
incredible.
never listened to it. I'm gonna have to go away and do that.
Oh, it's very, very cool. It's a very cool album. 2 very guitar-y albums, which interestingly, listening to tracks off them in isolation doesn't do anything for me, because I appreciate these guitarists as incredible guitarists, but I much prefer to, if I'm in the mood for listening to either of them, I much prefer to listen to these albums in their entirety, and then I kind of get what they're about a bit more. So one is Joe Satriani, Surfing with the Alien.
Oh wow, yeah. I need to listen to that because I've been getting more into that kind of thing recently. But yeah, I need to check that one out.
Listen to that whole album. I mean, it's a more of a musical journey, really, to listen to that.
Yeah.
And then similarly, Steve Vai, Passion and Warfare.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Vai is an incredible musician and composer, but Passion and Warfare is, I think, an album that deserves to be listened to in the whole, rather than just going and putting For the Love of God on or whatever track that you've heard off of it, because it just works better as a complete composition. And then the last one that I'll mention, there are so many more that I could mention, but the last one that I'll mention, only because this is my go-to Sunday morning album without fail, when I just want to put something on and just feel like it is Sunday morning and life is good, and it's the entire album that I put on vinyl, which is Lionel Richie's Can't Slow Down. It's just a great album. I know it's just the least rock and roll thing ever, man.
But why not? Nothing wrong with that. I mean,
well, yeah. It's got, tracks like All Night Long on there, Penny Lover, Hello is on there, obviously, which is a great number, but it also has the beautiful track Running with the Night on there.
Yeah.
And
careful now.
There is someone that plays on Running with the Night. There is a great guitar solo on that album.
Yeah.
And
I know.
Yeah.
We know who it is.
We know who it is.
Spieve Bukafer.
That's right. And that's not the reason I've chosen that album, and that is a great track. But that whole album is just awesome.
I need to go and check those out, man. And I'm going to throw another couple in, which I think are well worth a listen to.
Yeah.
If you're in a heavy rock or a rock, just a rocking out kind of mood, you want to listen to a good album, Van Halen 2. It's just a stunning piece of work, and it's only about half an hour long. And let's not forget an album for me, which for me only makes sense. Some of these have been, albums full of great songs, but I think they're enjoyed better as a complete work. For me, there's an album that only makes sense and listened to as a complete works, and that's Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd.
Yes.
Which
totally
really has to be listened to from beginning to end. Treat it as one long song.
Yeah.
And otherwise, for me, except maybe Money, it doesn't make sense unless you're listening to each song, because each song kind of moves into the next, in a particular way. And then the last album I wanted to mention, which is, I think, a really great album, although we probably mentioned this guy too much, is just Continuum, John Mayer. That's a really great album.
I agree.
Top to bottom.
I agree.
In fact, I think that's probably his only album that is really great from top to bottom.
I agree.
But yeah, that's another one which is good for sitting down and relaxing to, because it does have a nice cadence from beginning to end, and it kind of starts well and it ends well, and you kind of go on a bit of a journey through those songs. It's not just a greatest hits kind of thing, but that's a good one to enjoy as a complete album.
Oh, I've got that on vinyl as well. I'm going to have to go listen to that on vinyl now. I can sense a vinyl listening night tomorrow night. Yeah, definitely, man. See, and that's the thing. That's it. That's something to look forward to, right? To go, do you know what? Tomorrow night, I'm not going to turn on Netflix or whatever. I'm not gigging. I'm going to chill out after the kids have gone to bed, have a nice glass of something to drink, and I'm just going to listen to music. Yeah. I don't know. I'm hoping there's other people that get equally excited about that kind of thing.
I think, and this has been an important podcast for me, because like I said, I think I'm realizing that I think I've been abusing, the importance of listening to music for myself. Like I said, I can't remember the last time I sat down to just listen to music. It's always been as a secondary thing on what I'm doing. Like when I'm working, I'll listen to some music. Or if I'm editing the podcast, obviously I'm not listening to music, but if I'm like, rendering files down, or, just waiting for things to happen, I might be listening to something. It's always as a way to fill empty space rather than the primary thing I'm doing, and I'm missing out. I need to change something to remind myself that it's something I should do regularly as primary thing to do, not just a secondary thing. So yeah, important that.
Oh mate, I'm so pleased we've come to such a poignant place, and with some cool recommendations for each other to go and listen to, and hopefully for our audience to go and listen to, and let us know if you listen to this podcast, any of those albums that we've recommended, if you enjoyed them and agree with us, and also let us know, please, our audience, which albums you would add to that list that me and Matt should go away and listen to as complete pieces of work that we haven't mentioned today. I'm sure there's plenty that our audience would have us go and listen to.
Yeah, and another important thing to add, I think, here, which maybe we haven't said, is if you do decide to go out and get yourself a record player and some speakers and stuff, don't just start ordering your vinyl online. Go and find your local Ben's Collectors Records. Find your local vinyl store. Go and support them. Go in there and have those conversations and have a cup of coffee with them and discover things. You might come out with something different to what you wanted when you went in. Or just go in not knowing what you want, but go and have those conversations with people, with strangers, about what music they like and what you like, and make cross recommendations, because that's worth so much more than the 10 or 15 quid you'd spend on a record or two anyway, that you're not going to get that online. Same with streaming services. You're not going to get those conversations with people through Spotify, and that's invaluable.
Absolutely.
Music needs a host sometimes. You don't find something new sometimes without a host to say, hey, come and listen to this.
Absolutely. Good advice, mate. Good advice. What a pleasure.
Mate, I had one last thing to ask you before we wrap up for today.
Yeah, please do.
Way Huge STO.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
Right. So this is the pedal that we discussed last week. It's just come out. You were very kind enough, Matt, to give my wife a recommendation for a birthday present for me, which she wanted and sought from you, and you'd recommended this pedal to her. For those that didn't catch last week's episode, go and have a listen. But essentially, this is a pedal that I hadn't heard of. It's brand new out. You'd obviously heard of it, Matt, and I think it's based on the Noble's ODR1, which is a pedal that I'd heard of and was kind of thinking about purchasing. So it's a great pedal for me to have tried out. I'm going to gig it tonight in Anger, and I can't wait. It's on the board now. As I predicted, it's slotted in to the kind of middle of my gain staging. So I'm kind of going to use it for a crunchy rock rhythm sound. It's not going to be my main lead distortion sound, but probably it's going to be the pedal that's used the most, because for a lot of the stuff that I do in this 2-guitar band, that kind of rhythm crunch rock stuff for the main riffs, is this pedal I think is going to fit the bill. So the Boss Blues Driver has come off the board, and this has gone in its place. And wow, this pedal has got such a unique character and sound to it. It is monstrous in terms of the power of it.
Really?
It is, it's just like there is so much low end to it in a really good way, that I'm bracing myself for how this is going to sound at gig volumes, because I've got a feeling it's going to blow me away. I think so. I've only tried it at home yet. I'll let you know what it sounds like tonight at a gig. My one kind of thing that I'm going to be interested to see is the tone control on it. Goes from very dark, very muddy, almost unusable in terms of dark kind of muddiness to it, pillowiness I think they refer to it as, but it's basically very muddy. At least with a guitar with humbuckers in it, but could be a very nice kind of sound for some kind of jazzier or bluesier stuff played quite gently. But it does sweep all the way through to pretty bright and clear. But I would say it could do with an extra maybe 10-15% of treble clarity on it, at least I think. So I'm going to see if that works in a live setting, or if I need to tweak the EQ on my amp a little bit more just to compensate for it's not muddiness. It's just a very warm, very low end heavy overdrive, but I think it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited to use it tonight, so I'll let you know how it goes. But so far, it put a big smile on my face. So
a way huge smile on your face.
Way huge smile on my face.
Dear. Amazing. Well, dude, great conversation this week. Really enjoyed it. Really eye opening for me. Self kind of discovery there in our conversation for me, and I've opened up some thoughts about my future plans there about wanting to listen to music differently and treat it with a bit more respect, actually. Really important one this week.
Yeah, cool. Cheers, man. Really enjoyed it. Well, have a great week, buddy. And look forward to catching up with you next week.
Fantastic. Good stuff, mate. Have a cracking weekend and a good week, and I'll speak to you next week.
Cheers, pal.
All the best, mate. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this week's conversation. I know I did. I came away from this one wanting to go away and just listen to albums from front to back, which is what I'm going to go and do now. Anyway, have a great week. Remember to come and join us on our social media pages, and remember to follow those links in the show notes to be able to give our podcast a rating and a review. Anyway, thank you. Have a good week. Take care. Speak soon.